And for you hard right people who are, sorry. And there are millions of people in that circumstance. I know it's abused, but come on. So let's negotiate, all right, a fair system, but don't shut down the government. And that's the memo. All right, ICE. Okay. So this is an interesting story. Saturday, Chicago. 3 ICE agents are patrolling about 15 miles away from their headquarters, 40th Street and Kedzie Avenue, if you know the Windy City. 10 cars, 10, come at the ICE agents. One of the cars is looking like she, the driver, is going to run them over. Her name is Marimar Martinez. The ICE agents shoot her. She's wounded. She goes to the hospital, not life-threatening, in FBI custody right now. All right. This is horrendous, right? So the governor of the state, who is informed immediately, this broke fast. Boom. And it wasn't a hard story to get because the ICE agents had to report it. So J.B. Pritzker says this. Go.
So here it's really hard to know exactly what the facts are, and they won't let us access the facts. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
That's not true. These people it's just not true at all. Everybody knew it happened. I knew it happened within the hour, and I'm on Long Island. So the governor now is embarrassed. Number one, he's in an untenable place. But listen to this. So Fox News gets a hold of a dispatch message from Chicago's chief of patrol, a man named John Hein, H-E-I-N. The message goes out to all Chicago police officers, quote, Chief of Patrol, no units will respond to this as related. Caller is one of approximately 30 armed patrol agents who are being surrounded by a large crowd of people requesting Chicago Police Department. Don't respond. No units will respond. So even though the ICE agents are now under siege and danger, physical danger, this guy, the Chicago PD chief of patrol, says the local cops can't help them. That's a crime. Now, I expect the Justice Department to go in heavy on this. Pam Bondi. You cannot do that. Now, if that was ordered by the mayor, Brandon Johnson, or the police chief, they need to be arrested. And Hein needs to be investigated. Because you can't do that. That's so horrendous. It's really hard to believe. So we'll kill them now. Now, all of this has set up an advantage for the White House, for the Trump administration, because in the Constitution it says if the local authorities cannot or will not ensure the public safety, then the federal government can go on in. Remember Shays' Rebellion, George Washington, okay? Took the federal troops and said, okay, Massachusetts is not going to control it, we will. And so this way is precedent, the president. And finally, Portland, I should mention that 300 ICE agents are supposedly going to be in Chicago by the end of this week. But we don't know for sure because there's all kinds of lawsuits. Same thing in Portland. National Guard troops from Texas, California are on their way to Portland, but it's being held up by litigation. But I expect President Trump to win all of this. Joining us now from Florida is a constitutional attorney. Now, this guy has been around. Bruce Fein was general counsel of the FCC under President Reagan, participated in the drafting of articles of impeachment against Nixon and Bill Clinton. Wow. Quite the resume, counselor.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, it's okay. I'm telling the truth. We only get the best guests on this program. All right, so am I reading this wrong, that the Trump administration probably will win this in the Supreme Court?
I think right now the jury is out, but let me add a couple of footnotes to your opening observations. The power to utilize the military to enforce the law is not in the Constitution. It's in congressional statutes. Shays' Rebellion actually occurred before the Constitution in 1786, but those are small things. At present, we do know that there's a statute, at least now President Trump has refrained from invoking. It's called the Insurrection Act of 1807. It was urged by some to be utilized with regard to many of the protests that surfaced after George Floyd killing, but President Trump, I think he was concerned that the military wasn't completely supportive of invoking the Insurrection Act that says, in times when there's sufficient chaos and disruption that the enforcement of federal laws is severely compromised, he can utilize the military. It is what's called an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act of 1877, which says ordinarily you can't use the military to enforce civilian law unless Congress by statute creates an exception.
Okay, let me stop you there. Let me push back. So the Shays' Rebellion came under the Articles of Confederation, which were then incorporated into the U.S. Constitution. In 1871, U.S. Grant ordered federal troops to South Carolina without congressional approval to put down a Ku Klux Klan. It was like a war. And the federal troops went in, and it was violent shooting, all kinds of stuff. Okay? Then the city of New Orleans and others were taken over by the federal government because they would not ensure public safety. You'll remember that. There were actually law enforcement agents from New York City that were appointed to run the New Orleans Police Department with federal oversight. So you're correct in your interpretation, but there is that clause that there are exceptions to the Posse Comitatus law when the public or federal facilities or people are deemed to be in danger, correct?
Well, I mean, I think I'd never like to be disputatious, but I add a little bit of context here. Remember, those invocations by President Grant were during Reconstruction, where there are military governments running all of the South. Reconstruction did not end until at least 1877.
Yeah, but it didn't matter because the South Carolinian authorities had their own elected officials, and they would not deal with the Ku Klux Klan. That's why Grant wrote the order.
Yeah, right, but that was before the Posse Comitatus Act, and
it was 6 years before.
It was based upon Reconstruction law. But I'm just saying, Bill, there's nothing in the express language of the Constitution that addresses this issue. It does say in Article 1, Section 9, that Congress may suspend the writ of habeas corpus and you could impose martial law, so to speak. But that's Congress, not the executive branch. And here, at least at present, Mr. Trump is not Congress to do anything, including
you would say that the Trump lawyers are going to raise the Insurrection Act. That would be the way to go, correct?
If they want to, well, they're
going to have to defend it. Yes. They're going to have to.
No, I think that is correct, and say that was contemplated during the George Floyd demonstrations, many of which erupted into violence. But Trump decided, for his own reasons, not to invoke the Insurrection Act. But I underscore the importance in my mind is always process over personalities. That's what the process is. And Congress can expand the instances in which a president can use the military by statute, but it has to amend the law and make it as possible it can be justified. And the law is pretty clear, Bill, that the dividing line between when we have ordinary law enforcement and these extraordinary occasions when the president can intercede is basically when the court system has broken down. We know that courts are there because people do violate the law from time to time. There are massive violations during Prohibition.
Okay, but let me stop you there. Sanctuary cities defy the law.
Yeah.
Chicago and Portland are sanctuary cities. So that go ahead.
It's more complicated, Bill, for this reason, and I don't want to sound like a lawyer.
No. Just shoot it. Go ahead.
This is the U.S. Supreme Court,
Yeah.
and it arose with regard to gun control. And the Supreme Court held you cannot coerce state authorities to enforce federal law, right? Immigration law is federal law. It's exclusively entrusted to Congress and the executive in Article 1, Section 8. And the courts have held that you cannot compel a state to assist in immigration enforcement. A state may choose to cooperate, fair enough, right? And the federal government can utilize as many ICE agents they want to enforce federal law. So it's a little bit misleading to say you may disagree with the decision of a state to say we don't want to help enforce
Okay,
the law.
but
And remember, help is
why?
different than
What was the difference
interfere.
then? What would be the difference then? You can flood the zone with ICE agents, but why not National Guard? It's the same protective apparatus. Look, when the feds
No,
took
you
over,
can't do-
you
Bill,
were
Bill, they
around. You were
do that.
around. Wait
Bill,
a
Bill,
minute.
okay.
You were around when the federal government took over the city of New Orleans Police Department. Okay?
Yeah.
They did it citing public safety, that the police department in New Orleans, the state of Louisiana, was not able to protect the citizenry. The same law that was used to send the Guard into LA when there were the riots, that when the police chief of Los Angeles said, we can't handle this, and we clearly said it, and our people are in danger, bang, the Guard went in and the courts allowed them to go in, correct?
Yes, and that correct. And the reason was because the state authorities were saying we cannot enforce the law.
Just
We
the
need
police
help.
chief. The governor
Police chief,
wouldn't. The
he
governor
spoke, but
repudiated it, and so did the
wasn't.
legislature.
He wasn't contradicted. The states weren't. I mean, the governor wasn't contradicting that. Here we have a situation which is a little more complex, where the governors are saying we can handle this issue. We don't need assistance, and at least at present, it doesn't appear as though the federal officials being sent in are confined to simply enforcing the immigration laws, which they're entitled to do. And
All right,
Mr.
let me
can send
challenge
in
again.
as many agents as he wishes.
If you have a chief of patrol sending out a message to cops, do not protect ICE agents, as you have in Chicago, that seems to me to be all you need to send in National Guard to protect the ICE agents.
Well, I agree with that, and the National Guard could go in and protect the ICE agents for sure. Just like he can send in the Guard to protect federal buildings, including
Right.
ICE buildings, if they are attacked. I have no doubt about that. I think some of the litigation, Bill, is because some of the federal interveners are going beyond simply enforcing the immigration laws and protecting ICE agents, although they're doing that as well. But I do not, and if it comes to the U.S. Supreme Court, I have no doubt that with regard to federal officials enforcing federal law, that the Supreme Court will say Trump, under existing statutes, can dispose of the National Guard, the military, to accomplish that function. To the extent there's a dispute, it's whether they can go beyond the federal functions and enforce the law more generally.
Okay, that seems to be logical. But you know, the National Guard isn't making any arrests in D.C. where it's posted, and wouldn't make any arrests in Portland or Chicago. They're there to contain the violence, and the arrests are being made by federal agents primarily. You know that. The Guard hasn't made any arrests. So that would take that issue away from the judges that are trying to stay it.
Well, it's oftentimes the law is very complicated, and lawyers draw lines that maybe are mysterious to lay people. But even if they're not making arrests, the statute says that you can be summoned to protect federal buildings, federal officers in the discharge of federal responsibilities. But it doesn't say as long as you don't make arrests, you can go ahead and police for other purposes, at least if the state officials don't want it. Now, my view is that the immigration is the chief issue. Why are you going? And if you're asking for an electoral mandate, Trump did get a mandate with regard to immigration, but I don't think he got a mandate for every other law.
Right. Well, immigration, certainly in Chicago, I think that's the property in Portland, Oregon, that'll upset. But I'm going to predict here, Counselor, that the Supreme Court will allow the guard to go in, and basically about what you said. But I don't know whether they're going to be that specific in spelling out exactly what the guard can and can't do. I don't. That would be unusual for the court to do that. Last word.
No, it wouldn't. I study the court, read a lot of their opinions. No, sometimes they can be very precise. You can go this far, but no further. They don't have to do that. After all, they're the final word, right? But it wouldn't be unique in the annals of Supreme Court.
No, but this is a political court.
This is what you need to do.
This is a political court. And I don't know whether it's going to be 6-3 or 5-4. It might be 5-4. But I think they're going to give Trump the authority to do this because they understand that the locals and states are undermining the federal government here. That's how I see it.
And I want to make one thing clear, Bill. I do think it becomes constitutionally suspect for a state to say we're not going to help or protect ICE agents, but others we will protect, because the U.S. Supreme Court has also said you can't single out federal operations for discrimination. Once you have state authorities out there, you can't, insofar as they're discharging their duties, say we'll protect everything except the feds. That doesn't work. The Supreme Court has said it's got to be even-handed if you have the authority at all.
All right. You think I should take the bar exam, Counselor? That was a good discussion. I appreciate your expertise. And we'll have you back after they rule, because they're going to have to rule fast on this. So thank you very much, Counselor. We appreciate it.